In the dark waters of the Pacific, a shadow moves, silent, unseen. It's not a whale, not a warship, but something far more dangerous. A handmade submarine, loaded with drugs worth millions, gliding just beneath the waves. These are the narco submarines, the ghost ships of the modern drug trade. For decades, we've imagined drug traffickers racing across oceans in fast boats or sneaking through airports. But today, they've gone underwater. What began as crude, homemade vessels has evolved into an entire fleet of stealth submarines, engineered by cartels to outsmart the world's most advanced navies. In this story, we dive into the secret world of narco subs, how they're built, how they move, and how law enforcement is fighting a nearly invisible enemy beneath the sea. The rise of the ghost ships. In the endless blue of the Pacific Ocean, silence can hide anything. For decades, the world's navies ruled the waves, confident that nothing could move across the sea unseen. But then came the ghosts, silent vessels that slipped beneath the surface, carrying billions of dollars worth of narcotics, and rewriting the rules of maritime crime. These were not military submarines built in secret government facilities. They were homemade, handcrafted by cartels, hidden deep in the mangrove swamps of Colombia and Ecuador, assembled from fiberglass, scrap metal, and desperation. The world would come to know them as narco submarines, or simply, narco subs. The first whispers of these ghost ships surfaced in the early 1990s. Fishermen off Colombia's Pacific coast reported seeing strange shapes moving low in the water, long, narrow vessels barely breaking the surface, leaving almost no wake. At first, authorities dismissed the sightings as myths or misidentifications. But in 1993, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration and the Colombian Navy stumbled upon something extraordinary. A crude, half-submerged vessel abandoned in a river near the coastal city of Buenaventura. It looked like something out of a nightmare, a 12-meter-long fiberglass tube, painted ocean blue, powered by a small diesel engine. Inside were fuel drums, food supplies, and a cramped cockpit just large enough for 2 people. There was no official record of such a craft existing. No nation claimed it, and yet, it was real. A drug-running submarine built from scratch. At first, investigators laughed at its simplicity. The vessel seemed too unstable to survive the open sea. But soon, more began to appear. Slightly better, slightly faster, slightly quieter. Within a few years, law enforcement realized they were witnessing the birth of a new kind of smuggling technology. From riverboats to stealth machines. The earliest narco subs weren't true submarines. They were semi-submersibles, boats designed to ride just below the surface, with only a small part visible above water. This made them almost invisible to radar, and impossible to spot from a distance. Most were built in jungle workshops under the cover of dense vegetation. The cartels used local fishermen, engineers, and even ex-naval mechanics to bring their blueprints to life. Each model that appeared showed a leap in ingenuity. By the early 2000s, these ghost ships could carry up to 10 tons of cocaine over thousands of kilometers. They used exhaust cooling systems to reduce their infrared signature and low reflective paint to blend into the sea. Some even had GPS navigation and ballast systems, mimicking the technology of real submarines, all without formal engineering training. The construction process was astonishingly secretive. Components were smuggled in piece by piece. The hulls were built in hidden sheds near rivers that led to the ocean. Once completed, the subs were painted, tested, and sent off under the cover of night. If they reached Mexico or Central America, the drugs would then be smuggled north toward the United States. If they sank, no one spoke of it again. Encounters at sea. For years, the world barely noticed. These vessels traveled too low for radar, too quiet for sonar, and too isolated for witnesses. But everything changed in 2006, when the U.S. Coast Guard intercepted a fully operational narco sub off the coast of Costa Rica. It was a 50-foot, self-propelled semi-submersible, carrying more than 3 tons of cocaine worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The crew surrendered after a tense standoff. When the Coast Guard boarded, they were shocked. Inside the dimly lit compartment were diesel fumes, heat, and suffocating humidity. The air was so toxic that officers had to wear masks. The 4 smugglers inside had been traveling for days, sealed in a space no bigger than a small bedroom, with barely enough oxygen to breathe. Their mission had been simple: stay low, stay silent, and deliver the cargo. It was one of the first times the world truly saw what these ghost ships were capable of. And it was just the beginning. The evolution of a shadow fleet. By the 2010s, narco subs had become the crown jewel of cartel innovation. Intelligence reports spoke of a shadow fleet, dozens, perhaps hundreds, of submarines quietly crossing the Pacific. Some were capable of traveling 2,000 nautical miles without surfacing. Others were fully submersible, able to dive up to 30 meters below the surface, completely invisible to radar. The sophistication stunned law enforcement. Many were equipped with satellite communication, navigation computers, and multiple engines. Their hulls were reinforced to withstand ocean pressure. Some were even coated with radar-absorbent material, the same used on stealth aircraft. But the innovation came at a human cost. Crews faced death every voyage, from suffocation, engine fires, or detection. Many never returned. Entire submarines vanished beneath the waves, their cargo and crew lost forever. Still, the money was irresistible. A single successful trip could earn a low-level operator a lifetime's income. The ghosts multiply. Every time a narco sub was captured, another appeared, slightly improved. Law enforcement dubbed them ghost ships, because for every one seized, several more seemed to slip through undetected. Between 2006 and 2020, authorities in Colombia, Ecuador, and the United States intercepted over 100 narco subs, yet analysts estimated that up to 70% of them still completed their missions successfully. In one remarkable case in 2019, a fully submersible was captured near Spain, the first of its kind found in European waters. It had traveled more than 5,000 miles across the Atlantic from South America, piloted by just 2 men. Authorities were stunned. The cartels had taken their fight global. The legacy of the first ghosts. What began as a crude experiment in the swamps of Colombia has evolved into one of the most sophisticated smuggling methods in modern history. Each discovery has pushed both sides, smugglers and enforcers, into a constant race for innovation. For every radar upgrade, a new stealth design appears. For every capture, another sub silently vanishes into the deep. Today, the narco sub remains one of the most mysterious threats on the high seas, a perfect symbol of human ingenuity twisted by greed. Born out of secrecy, perfected by necessity, and powered by desperation, these ghost ships remind us that the ocean still hides more than we can see. And somewhere, beneath the waves, another is being built, ready to rise from the darkness once again. Engineering illicit ingenuity. If the rise of the ghost ships revealed that narco subs existed, then this is the part where the curtain is pulled back, and we see how they are made. The truth is both ugly and brilliant. These vessels are the product of clever improvisation, borrowed know-how, and ruthless necessity. They are built not in shipyards, but in hidden workshops, mangrove sheds, abandoned warehouses, and jungle garages, by hands that learn to bend metal, fiberglass, and secrecy into something that can disappear beneath the sea. Materials of necessity. At first glance, the materials are deceptively simple. Most narco subs are made from fiberglass or marine-grade plywood coated in resin. Fiberglass is light, easy to shape, and does not reflect radar the way steel does, a useful property for smuggling. Builders often reinforce hulls with steel ribs or repurposed boat frames. For seals and weak points they use rubber gaskets, silicone, and industrial epoxy. Propulsion parts come from legitimate markets: diesel engines salvaged from trucks or fishing boats, gearbox assemblies, propeller shafts, and commercial propellers. Electrical systems are often constructed from marine batteries, automotive wiring, and second-hand navigation instruments. Pipework and valves are made from PVC and scrap metal. Even the paint matters. Low gloss, ocean gray finishes reduce visibility from a distance. This is not high-end engineering. It's resourceful engineering. A garage mechanic and a welder can, with the right plans and enough money, create a hull that will float and a system that will move. How they move? Quietly, slowly, reliably. Silence is the narco sub's greatest defense. To minimize noise, builders take several practical steps. Engines are mounted on rubber isolators or suspended within sound-damping boxes to reduce vibration. Exhaust systems are routed through long mufflers and often cooled with seawater before leaving the sub, a crude but effective way to reduce heat and infrared signature. Propellers are designed for low RPM operation. Turning slowly produces less noise and less cavitation, the telltale bubbling that alerts sonar. Most early designs are semi-submersible. They ride just below the surface with a small snorkel tube or exhaust mast for air intake and engine exhaust. This allows a conventional diesel engine to run while keeping the hull nearly invisible. The semi-submersible's advantage is simplicity. No need for complex life support or high-capacity batteries. But the snorkel is a vulnerability. If it's spotted or damaged, the engine dies and the mission can fail. More advanced models move toward ballast systems. Builders fit internal tanks that fill with seawater to lower the vessel, then pump or force that water out with compresses or pumps to surface again. Some use hand-operated pumps as backups. Navigation is basic but effective. GPS, chart plotters, and compass systems guide courses. Simple periscopes or night vision cameras allow lookout without surfacing. A few of the most sophisticated units have battery-powered electric motors for short submerged runs, switching to diesel when they can use the snorkel, a hybrid approach that mimics legitimate submarine design on a homemade scale. Improvised stealth. Avoiding detection is more than low profile, it's deception. Some narco subs carry false decks or exterior fittings to look like ordinary fishing vessels when seen from a distance. Others are designed with low metallic signatures, fiberglass hulls, limited metal fasteners, and non-reflective paints to confuse radar returns. Exhaust cooling, slow prop rotation, and sound isolation all combine to blunt sonar and infrared detection. Even the launching methods are stealthy. Builders assemble subs inland in modular sections, then move pieces by truck to a hidden river or coastal slip for final assembly. Launches are timed with tides, weather, and fishing traffic, often during storms or at night when patrols are stretched thin. The people behind the build. The crews who design and build these machines are rarely brilliant lone geniuses working in isolation. Their teams, ex-fishermen, boat builders, mechanics, and occasionally former Navy technicians who know something about pressure and pumps. Cartels recruit whatever expertise they can find, and they pay well. Blueprints travel through secure channels. Designs evolve as each captured sub reveals its weaknesses. This knowledge sharing explains the rapid improvements. A capture leads to a leak. Investigators find a construction trick. Smugglers learn and adapt. It is a grim, iterative arms race where failure means death, but success means millions in profit. Extreme risks. For builders and crews. For all the ingenuity, these vessels are dangerous by design. The risks begin with construction. Poorly bonded hull seams can fracture under wave stress. Fiberglass mixed incorrectly can delaminate. A badly aligned shaft or a makeshift gearbox can seize and rupture fuel lines. Diesel fumes in a cramped hull are a constant hazard. Ignite them and the sub becomes a floating furnace. Crews live with claustrophobia and toxic air. Many semi-subs lack adequate ventilation. Carbon monoxide and diesel fumes can easily reach lethal concentrations. Fires happen too often. An electrical short or fuel leak can fill the cabin with smoke in seconds. Fully submersible designs multiply the risks. A failed ballast valve or a cracked hull means rapid flooding. At depth, there is no escape. Even navigation carries peril. These crafts are unstable in heavy seas, and storms can flip or break them apart. A disabled sub in open water is a death sentence. And if authorities intercept a sub, the boarding can be violent. Crews may be captured, beaten, or killed in firefights. Those who survive often face severe legal penalties, but few who enter this world expect long lives. Brilliant, brutal, and built to vanish. The engineering of narco subs is a study in contrasts. On one hand, you see clever adaptation, using scarce materials, lowering signatures, and creating systems that, against all odds, work. On the other, you see the brutality, lives squeezed into tiny hulls, a tolerance for failure that would be unacceptable in any legitimate field. These machines are not artworks. They're tools built to disappear. Each one carries a story of hands that learn to bend the sea to their will, and of the terrible price people pay when innovation is turned toward crime. The ingenuity is real, the cost is ruinous, and the next time a ghost ship slips beneath the waves, it will likely carry both clever engineering and human despair, in equal measure. The silent smuggling network. If the narco sub is the engine, then the network around it is the bloodstream, unseen, wide-reaching, and vital to its survival. These ghost ships do not move alone. They're one piece in a vast, well-organized system that stretches from jungle workshops to city safehouses, from remote beaches to bustling ports. To understand the narco sub threat, you must follow the routes, open the ledgers, and meet the people who keep the gears turning. Major routes. From source to market. Most narco subs begin their journeys in the same place, the coca-growing regions and coastal workshops of South America. From there, routes fan out like spokes on a wheel. The most established corridor runs across the eastern Pacific. Submarines are launched from remote river mouths in Colombia and Ecuador and head northwest, skirting international waters toward the coasts of Central America and Mexico. Once they reach friendly shores, their cargo moves overland or by smaller vessels toward the United States, the end market that drives the trade. Another important path crosses the Atlantic. In recent years, traffickers have pushed product toward West Africa as a transshipment hub, then on to Europe. A narco sub crossing the Atlantic is rare but not unheard of. It shows how sophisticated the operations have become and how cartels are willing to take greater risks to reach new markets. The Caribbean and the Southern Pacific still see many semi-submersibles. Smaller coastal runs supply regional markets or move product to larger ships that will carry it onward. The key point is geography and secrecy. Launches happen where surveillance is thin, landfall where local control is weak, and handoffs in places where corruption or chaos create openings. What they carry. Beyond cocaine. Cocaine remains the primary cargo, dense, high value, easy to conceal in large shipments. A single successful trans-oceanic trip can move multiple tons, turning a caravan of plain materials into hundreds of millions in street value. But narco subs are not single-purpose. Over time, operators have used them to carry a variety of contraband. Cash. Large sums of physical currency are still moved to pay suppliers and launder proceeds where electronic trails are risky. Weapons. Firearms and ammunition sometimes travel alongside drugs, arming networks on both ends of the route. Smaller high-value goods. Rare electronics, luxury items, and black market commodities that are worth moving quietly. People. While less common, there are reports of vessels used in human trafficking or the movement of high-value migrants under organized control. This variety makes the narco sub useful beyond simple drug runs. It becomes a flexible tool for criminal enterprises that need secure, deniable transport across hostile waters. Financing the fleet. Money, risk, reward. Building and operating narco subs is expensive. These crafts can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to construct, and a single trip requires fuel, crew pay, coastal support, and bribes. So who fronts the money? At the top are the cartels, criminal organizations capable of enormous cash flow. They fund construction either directly or through middlemen called brokers. These brokers arrange everything: design, build, pilot training, and delivery. Investors within criminal networks treat a sub run like a high-stakes shipment: high upfront cost, high potential return. The profit margins are enormous, which makes the risk acceptable. Money moves through complex, often illegal channels. Cartels use shell companies, cash couriers, and informal value transfer systems to hide payments. Proceeds are then laundered through real estate, front businesses, and complicit banks. In some coastal communities, the cash injection from submarine operations transforms local economies, at least temporarily, creating a local class of actors who benefit and may protect operations. Insurance, in the legal sense, does not exist for these voyages. Instead, smugglers use redundancy and compartmentalization, multiple crews, staggered launches, and fallback drop points. If one sub is lost or intercepted, another might succeed. The loss, while costly, is a cost of doing business. Coordination. A global orchestra of crime. Running a narco sub-operation requires precise coordination. It is a choreography that spans time zones and continents. At the local level, launch teams handle assembly and the final push to sea. Coastal lookouts and spotters monitor patrols and weather. Motherships or support boats sometimes shadow the sub, ready to pick up cargo or crew if needed. On land, reception teams wait at pre-arranged beaches, ports, or river mouths to offload and move product away quickly. Communication is often layered to avoid detection. Operators use encrypted messaging, burner phones, and couriers. Brokers coordinate with buyers and distribution networks using code words and prepaid arrangements. Each actor knows only what they need to know, a deliberate strategy to limit damage if someone is captured. International coordination is part criminal savvy, part corporate logistics. Cartels have long-range planners who book shipping lines, corrupt officials, and local gangs to ensure smooth transfers. They also adapt rapidly. If one route becomes dangerous, they shift to another. This flexibility has made interdiction difficult. It is not just a vessel you need to stop, but an entire system that will quickly reroute around obstacles. The social and political web. A successful narco sub-network depends on social and political conditions as much as it does on engineering. Poverty, weak governance, and corruption create the environment where these networks can thrive. In some regions, local communities accept the presence of smugglers because the money supports livelihoods. In others, violent enforcement and intimidation keep people silent. The global scale of the network also draws in legitimate businesses, port workers, transport companies, and even financial institutions, either through coercion, bribery, or unwitting complicity. This mixing of legal and illegal economies makes the problem harder to trace and harder to dismantle. A system built to survive. Narco submarine operations are not isolated acts of daring. They're expressions of industrialized crime. They combine geography, logistics, finance, and corruption into a resilient system built to survive pressure. Capture one vessel, and the network adapts. Arrest one leader, and another rises. Understanding this network is not just about tracking a single ghost ship. It is about seeing the infrastructure that supports it, the routes, the cargo, the money, and the people who make it all possible. Only by breaking those connections can authorities make the seas safer. Next, we dive into the technology and tactics used to detect and stop these ghost ships, the constant cat-and-mouse game between smugglers and those trying to stop them. The cat-and-mouse game. Every ghost ship that slips beneath the waves turns the ocean into a chessboard. On one side, smugglers build and hide. On the other, law enforcement pieces move methodically, trying to corner an enemy that prefers darkness. This is the cat-and-mouse game. A long, costly, and often frustrating struggle where each side learns, adapts, and innovates. For every narco sub found, many more remain unseen, and every victory teaches a lesson to both hunter and hunted. The detection problem. Narco subs are designed to be hard to find. Their low profile means radar often sees only a faint blip or nothing at all. Their slow, low RPM propellers reduce noise, making them difficult targets for sonar. Their fiberglass hulls do not reflect like steel, and their exhaust cooling systems mask heat signatures. The result? Traditional maritime surveillance tools, radar, sonar, and patrol aircraft, can miss them entirely. Complicating detection is the sheer size of the ocean. Maritime authorities cannot watch every mile of coastline. Mixed jurisdiction and limited assets create gaps smugglers exploit. Remote launch sites in mangroves or river mouths are easy to reach by land but hard to police. Smugglers time launches at night, during storms, or when patrols are focused elsewhere. The mariner's adage still holds. The sea is big, and secrets often disappear in its vastness. Tools of the hunters. Faced with this challenge, law enforcement has had to get creative. Technology once reserved for naval forces and research labs is now in the hands of coast guards and anti-narcotics units. Aerial surveillance. Long-range patrol aircraft and helicopters scan for suspicious wakes, snorkels, or the faint shapes of semi-submersibles. Infrared cameras help detect heat from engines or recent activity on beaches. Satellites. Commercial and military satellites have become invaluable. They offer wide-area imaging that can spot unusual patterns, clusters of trucks near a river, or a vessel where none should be. Analysts can combine satellite imagery with ship tracking data to find suspicious gaps. Drones and UAVs. Unmanned aerial vehicles provide persistent surveillance with lower cost and greater reach than manned aircraft. They can hover over suspected areas for hours, capturing low-altitude images and video. Sonar and passive acoustic sensors. Deployed on ships or anchored in choke points, these devices listen for the unique acoustic signatures of engines and propellers. Passive arrays can pick up the faint hum of a distant sub, while active sonar pings may reveal a hull beneath the surface. Intelligence and HUMINT. Perhaps the most powerful tools are human informants, defectors, and undercover operatives. Tip lines and community cooperation help locate hidden shipyards and reveal launch plans. Financial intelligence. Tracing payments and shell companies can expose the money that builds and fuels the fleet. These tools are powerful, but expensive. Satellites, drones, and ships cost millions to operate. The mismatch in resources between wealthy cartels and underfunded coast guards is one reason smugglers continue to test boundaries. Tactics and strategy. Detecting a narco sub is only half the battle. Interdiction requires coordination, timing, and care. Boarding a semi-submersible is dangerous. The vessel may be booby-trapped, carry armed crews, or sink if disabled. Law enforcement uses careful tactics. Interdiction at sea. When a suspicious craft is located, authorities attempt to shadow and isolate it. If safe, boarding teams approach under cover of darkness or from helicopters to surprise crews. Non-lethal disabling methods, like entangling propellers or disabling engines, help avoid fires or catastrophic flooding. Coordinated land-sea operations. Many successful seizures come from joint operations where Coast Guard vessels, naval ships, and police coordinate with intelligence units. Simultaneous raids on shore warehouses and shipyards prevent quick repairs or relaunches. Legal and financial pressure. Arresting organizers, freezing accounts, and dismantling front companies can be more effective than destroying a single sub. When the financial backers are exposed, the ability to fund complex builds decreases. International cooperation. Because narco sub runs cross borders, cooperation between countries is essential. Shared intelligence, joint patrols, and legal agreements to pursue suspects across jurisdictions increase the chances of success. Notable breakthroughs and costly failures. Over the years, there have been dramatic wins. Long-range chases that ended in seized cargo, intelligence-led raids that closed down hidden shipyards, and multinational operations that captured key brokers. Each win is a blow to the network and a chance to study designs and tactics, which in turn informs future enforcement. But there have also been failures. Smugglers have escaped after being spotted, slipping into international waters where pursuit is legally complicated. Coastal corruption has sometimes allowed launches to proceed despite patrols. Equipment failures and miscommunication have let decisive moments slip away. Every failure teaches smugglers how to be better and authorities how to improve. The geopolitical angle. Narco subs are not merely a law enforcement problem. They sit at the crossroads of geopolitics, economics, and local stability. Countries with weak governance, porous borders, or compromised officials become safe harbors for these networks. Regional instability can turn a coastline into a launchpad for transnational crime. International aid and cooperation have tried to close the gaps. Training programs, joint exercises, and equipment transfers improve local capability. Yet these efforts require sustained political will and funding. Where priorities shift or resources dwindle, smugglers regain advantage. A game with no end in sight. Cat and mouse games are iterative by nature. Every new detection method breeds new evasion techniques. When satellites track coastal shipments, smugglers move inland or use decoys. When sonar listening posts increase, snorkels get smaller and mufflers colder. The ocean becomes a laboratory for adaptation. For law enforcement, success is measured in disruption, not elimination. Each seized vessel, each arrested broker, each closed shipyard degrades the network, but it rarely ends the threat. For viewers and citizens, the lesson is sobering. As long as demand and money exist, innovation will follow. The question is less whether the cat can win, and more how many resources we are willing to put into the chase. In the next section, we look forward to the future of submarine smuggling, and the technologies and policies that might finally tip the balance. The cat and mouse game. When a narco sub slips beneath the waves, it does more than move cargo. It forces a whole industry of hunters to rethink how to find what refuses to be found. This is the cat and mouse game, a slow, dangerous duel between smugglers who refine silence and law enforcement that must chase shadows across thousands of miles of ocean. Why detection is so hard. Narco subs were designed to be invisible. They hug the surface, have low metal content, and run engines at whisper speeds to avoid sonar and thermal detection. Radars often only pick up faint blips or nothing at all. Sonar can miss slow turning, low cavitation propellers. Exhaust systems are cooled to hide heat. And the ocean is vast. Authorities simply can't watch every mile of coastline and open water. These design choices, combined with geography and weather, make narco subs exceptionally difficult to detect and interdict. Tools of the hunters. Faced with that challenge, law enforcement has layered old-school seamanship with cutting-edge technology. Aerial and satellite surveillance. Patrol aircraft and helicopters use radar and infrared to spot unusual wakes or heat signatures. Commercial and military satellites provide wide-area imagery that can reveal suspicious movement patterns onshore and at sea. Analysts combine satellite images with vessel tracking data to flag anomalies for follow-up. Drones and UAVs. Unmanned aerial systems offer persistent, low-cost observation over remote coasts and shipping lanes. They can circle potential launch sites for hours, catching nighttime activity that manned craft might miss. Acoustic listening. Passive acoustic arrays and shipboard hydrophones listen for the faint acoustic signatures of diesel engines and propellers. When matched to known sound profiles, these sensors can point patrols toward a contact. Human intelligence and financial tracking, informants, undercover operations, and financial forensics remain essential. Following money trails, intercepting communications, and flipping low-level operators often produce the leads that technology cannot. These tools work best when used together. A satellite image without boots on the ground is a clue. A tip without a technical means to verify it is a risk. Coordinated multi-source intelligence creates the moments when police can act. Tactics. How interdictions happen. Interdicting a narco sub is delicate and dangerous. Boarding a semi-submersible risks fire, flooding, or armed resistance. Scuttling is a real and common response. So authorities favor careful, coordinated tactics. Shadow and isolate. Patrol vessels typically shadow suspects from a distance to avoid warning crews. When the moment is right, boarding teams approach rapidly, sometimes from helicopters, to surprise the crew. Disable, don't destroy. Where possible, teams use non-lethal disabling methods, entangling propellers, cutting fuel lines, or disabling electronics, to prevent scuttling and preserve evidence. Joint operations. Many successful seizures are the result of international cooperation. Coast guards, navies, and police working together, often with intelligence shared ahead of time. Legal arrangements to allow pursuit across jurisdictions are increasingly important. Even with the best plans, operations can go wrong, storms can separate teams, mechanical failures can sink targets before evidence is secured, and corruption can blunt otherwise solid leads. Dramatic cases. Wins and failures. A few standout incidents show how the game plays out. Costa Rica, 2006. One of the earliest major seizures occurred in 2006 when authorities intercepted a semi-submersible off the Central American coast carrying roughly 3 tons of cocaine. That case helped confirm that these vessels were more than local curiosities. They were ocean-crossing commercial tools of organized crime. High-value seizures, 2015-2016, over the 2010s. Coast guards in the Americas scored several large seizures, including multi-ton captures in 2015 and 2016. One 2016 interception reportedly netted about 6 tons of cocaine in international waters, showing both the scale of the operations and the reach of maritime law enforcement when intelligence and assets aligned. Atlantic Crossing Discovery, 2019. In 2019, Spanish authorities found a semi-submersible in Galicia containing about 3 metric tons of cocaine, a wake-up call that cartel-built vessels had begun to cross the Atlantic in earnest, extending the game into European waters. The discovery showed how adaptable smugglers are. When one route closes, they open another, often far from the traditional theaters. Scuttling and losses. For every seizure, there are many more submarine events where crews scuttle vessels and vanish. Intercepted subs are sometimes found empty, or break apart while being towed, denying authorities both cargo and full evidence of routes or networks. These near misses teach smugglers which designs fail and which work, accelerating the arms race. Challenges beyond technology. The cat-and-mouse game is not only technical, it is political, legal, and economic. Many coastal states lack funds, vessels, or trained personnel for sustained maritime patrols. Corruption and local complicity can blunt enforcement. Legal limits on pursuit and the complexities of international law sometimes halt chases at the edge of territorial waters. And above all, demand for drugs in destination markets makes the business model profitable enough to absorb losses. The evolving chessboard. Every interdiction teaches smugglers and law enforcement something new. A captured hull reveals construction secrets. Intercepted communications expose networks. A failed raid forces new concealment techniques. Smugglers adapt quickly. Smaller snorkels, quieter mufflers, longer range builds, and so the hunt continues. The cat-and-mouse game is not one battle but an endless campaign of innovation, risk, and response. For authorities, success looks like disruption, fewer launches, less capacity, and more leaders behind bars. For smugglers, success is a single undetected voyage that pays for dozens of failures. As we move forward, the question remains, can the hunters muster the sustained resources, legal tools, and international resolve needed to tip the balance? Or will the ghost ships keep slipping through the net? The future of submarine smuggling. If the past shows us how quickly smugglers learn, the future is the hard part, because the same creativity that built the first ghost ships will push them forward. Narco subs began as crude tubes of fiberglass. Tomorrow they could look, and behave, very differently. The race ahead is not just about bigger loads or longer trips. It is a technological and organizational sprint that will test the limits of detection, law, and human will. Sharper stealth, smaller, quieter, harder to see. Expect designs to get lower and quieter. Engineers working for criminal networks will continue to refine exhaust cooling, reduce heat signatures, and minimize metallic components. Snorkels will shrink or be replaced by chemical or fuel cell air systems that need less surface exposure. Propulsion will move toward low-noise electric drives powered by better batteries or hybrid systems that only run combustion engines when absolutely necessary. The result? Vessels that produce almost no obvious wake, little heat, and acoustic profiles that blend with the natural noise of the ocean. Composite materials and 3D printed components could make hulls lighter and cheaper to build, while still being strong enough for long voyages. Smugglers will adopt legitimate engineering advances and apply them in secret workshops, blurring the line between amateur improvisation and professional naval design. Autonomy and remote operation. One of the most worrying shifts will be toward autonomous or remotely piloted submarines. As consumer drones and autonomous surface vessels become cheaper and more reliable, the same principles can be adapted underwater. A sub that navigates via GPS, avoids patrols using pre-programmed routes, and surfaces only when conditions are safe could remove the life or death risk for crew members, and make interception harder because there are no people on board to interrogate. These vehicles might operate in swarms, lead craft scouts while others follow at a safe distance, or multiple small subs distribute a single large shipment to reduce the impact of any single loss. Remote launch and retrieval systems, using unmanned surface drones as motherships, could further distance human operators from the crime, complicating legal responsibility and enforcement. Smarter navigation and evasion. Artificial intelligence and improved sensors will help ghost ships avoid detection. Machine learning models can predict patrol patterns, identify satellite overpasses, and choose the quietest ocean lanes. Onboard systems could use passive acoustic sensing to listen for nearby vessels and adjust course in real time. Simple decision rules. Surface only on radar blackout windows, slow to a whisper when sonar passes close, will be automated and much faster than human reaction. Encryption, secure communications, and decentralized coordination using disposable devices will complicate intelligence gathering. Brokers will favor one-time codes, staggered handoffs, and compartmentalized teams so a single capture reveals little. Multi-purpose and modular designs. Future narco subs will be modular. Sections can be swapped depending on mission. Extra cargo tanks for long runs, battery packs for stealth legs, or even detachable pods that float ashore for easy pickup. Modularity makes repairs and clandestine assembly easier. Parts can move across borders disguised as legitimate cargo, and final assembly happens near launch points. This modular approach also allows rapid innovation. If authorities learn to detect one hull shape, builders can change components rather than rebuild whole boats. A fast, low-cost way to stay ahead. Broader users. Beyond cartels. As the technology becomes simpler and cheaper, a worrying expansion may occur. Other illicit actors, arms traffickers, organized criminal networks, or even politically motivated groups, could adopt submarine transport for sensitive cargo. In a more extreme scenario, state or state-sponsored actors might experiment with similar technologies for covered supply lines. The more actors using the method, the harder it becomes to profile and prioritize threats. New challenges for authorities. All of this raises three linked challenges for enforcement: detection, attribution, and legal response. Detection. Traditional sensors struggle with smaller, quieter craft. Authorities will need more persistent, distributed sensor networks, underwater microphones, coastal cameras, and constellations of small satellites or high-endurance drones, to close gaps. Attribution. An unmanned sub makes it harder to identify who ordered or funded a run. Without crew to question, intelligence must come from signals, financial trails, or onshore investigations. That means law enforcement must be as skilled in cyber and financial forensics as it is at sea. Legal and ethical tools. Chasing remote, autonomous vessels across international waters presents legal gray zones. Countries must update treaties and create fast, interoperable legal mechanisms for pursuit, seizure, and prosecution of unmanned criminal conveyances. Possible countermeasures. the other side of innovation. To meet this threat, authorities will lean on their own technological edge. Expect AI-driven analytics that fuse satellite imagery, ship tracking data, and social signals to spot anomalies. Networked sensor fields in choke points, arrays of low-cost acoustic buoys listening for unusual signatures. Rapid response unmanned assets, drones and robotic boats that can intercept dangerous vessels without putting crews at risk. Financial choke points, targeting the money and supply chains that make builds possible through international cooperation and stricter controls on dual-use materials. But these tools are expensive and require political will, training, and international trust. The balance of power will hinge on who invests faster and smarter. A moral and strategic question. The future of submarine smuggling is not purely technical. It is social and economic. As long as demand exists and profits remain vast, ingenuity will find a way. The question for societies is whether they will starve the market, build resilient legal and technological defenses, and support vulnerable coastal communities so they do not become enablers, or whether the oceans will continue to incubate an increasingly sophisticated industry of crime. In the end, the ghost ships teach a bitter lesson. Human creativity can build wonders and horrors alike. Which we get depends on where we choose to point innovation, toward safety and transparency, or toward profit and secrecy. Somewhere, in a dim workshop by a black river, somebody is already sketching the next ghost. Will the world be ready to meet it? A human story. Inside the hull. Behind every ghost ship is a person, or two, or four, whose life is reduced to the size of a metal tube. To understand the true cost of these machines, meet Diego, a composite of dozens of stories collected from survivors, interviews, and court records. His story is not unique, but it is real, small, urgent, and full of choices that most of us will never face. Diego grew up near a river where the jungle meets the sea. Work was scarce. Boats and engines were part of daily life. His father fixed outboard motors, and his uncle ran a small fishing crew. When cartels came to the coast, they brought money and a strange new offer: build a boat, help move a shipment, and be paid enough to change his family's life forever. At first, Diego said no. But months of missed seasons, unpaid debts, and a sick sister shifted the scale. The promise was simple and blunt: a single trip could pay for years of medicine, school fees, and a house. The cartel did not beg. It offered opportunity wrapped in danger. Training was short and secretive. Diego learned how to navigate by night, how to read currents, how to fix an engine under stress. He was shown the inside of a semi-submersible for the first time and told two things plainly: keep the boat low, and do not panic. There were no safety drills like on a ferry. There were only rules, mostly unwritten, and a small checklist shoved into the pocket of his jacket. Life inside, a room that moves. A narco sub is not a ship, it is a sealed life. Diego's compartment was no larger than a studio apartment. There was room to lie down, a small seat, a panel of gauges, and a muffled, growling engine. The air smelled of diesel, hot metal, and sea. Light was minimal. Time lost its meaning. Days at sea stretched like wet fabric. They moved slowly, sometimes surfacing only for minutes to check a GPS or listen to the radio. Meals were canned and brief. Sleep was broken and shallow. Conversations were short and practical. Course corrections, weather updates, and the low, ever-present talk of contingency plans. What to do if the engine died, if the boat started taking water, or if lights appeared on the horizon. Fear lived in the small things. A sudden cough could mean an engine problem. A tiny leak at a seam could mean a pump failing half a world from shore. When the muffled sound of another engine crept close, every head turned inward. The crew learned to identify the shapes of danger by sound alone. At night, the confinement pressed like a weight. The ocean outside could be a friend or a grave. Diego thought of home, of his sister's small smile, and tried to sleep. He also thought of the price of failure. The cartel's rules were clear: Failure carried debts that could not be paid with money. The money, good and poisoned. On one level, the math was simple. A successful voyage meant an immediate payout. Cash handed in the hours after landfall, promises of new clothes, and the sudden ability to buy what had been impossible. For Diego, the money meant his sister's operation and a repaired roof. It meant a temporary escape from hunger. But money from such trips comes with invisible taxes. Loyalty is enforced. Silence is bought with fear. The community's brief prosperity can turn sour as outsiders arrive with offers and demands. Diego's life improved in small, fragile ways. At the same time, his name was spoken in the shadows by people who now expected a return on their investment. The fear and the violence. Danger wasn't just the sea. It was also the men who bankrolled the operation. Crews were expected to be expendable. If capture meant the cartel lost millions, the response could be ruthless. Some ships were booby-trapped to destroy evidence. Others were scuttled, leaving men to the ocean's mercy. Stories circulate of crews abandoned mid-voyage, replaced, or punished for mistakes. When law enforcement finally came, the boarding was violent and chaotic. Diego remembers the flash of lights, the sound of a helicopter, and the sudden orders bellowed through a megaphone. His hands shook as they were forced up. He felt relief and terror at once, relief at survival, terror at what would come after, interrogation, trial, prison, or worse. Aftermath, choices and consequences. Survivors face hard roads. If they are captured and prosecuted, they may serve long sentences. If they return home, they carry new scars, suspicion, shame, or the knowledge that their choice put others at risk. Some are absorbed further into the cartel, offered higher pay and more dangerous roles. Others try to escape that life, but the ties can be hard to break, debts, threats, and the lack of legitimate alternatives. Diego's life changed in complex ways. The payout paid for medicine and a roof. It also brought a police record and nights when he woke gasping from dreams of flooded compartments and muffled alarms. He was a different man when he returned to his village, wealthier in small things, poorer in peace. A portrait of many. Diego is not a hero or a villain. He is part of a larger pattern. People who make desperate choices in desperate places. Some join willingly. Others are coerced. Some see themselves as caretakers, doing what must be done for family. Others dream of an exit that rarely arrives. These human stories complicate the simple narrative of criminality. They show that the ghost ships are also social machines, engines that move money, need, ambition, and despair. For law enforcement, this means arrests and seizures are necessary but insufficient. For communities, it means development, opportunity, and alternatives are the only long-term solution. Diego's final thought on that voyage is small and plain. He would never again step foot aboard a narco sub if he could help it. The money was real. The cost was deeper. In the hull's echo, he still hears the sea, patient, enormous, and indifferent to the small bargains human beings make when survival is on the line. Name changed to protect identity. Beyond cocaine, narco subs and the wider threat. Narco submarines began as a solution to one problem: moving huge quantities of drugs across waters that were increasingly watched. But like any adaptable transport technology, they can carry more than one kind of cargo. When a vessel that can slip under the radar exists, others with different motives will find ways to use it. What started as a drug smuggling innovation has ripple effects that touch weapons flows, cash movement, human trafficking, and, at the extreme, broader threats to regional and global security. Weapons and ammunition. Small arms, ammunition, and other weapons are compact, high-value cargo that benefit from stealthy maritime delivery. A narco sub can move crates of rifles or machine gun ammunition to arm militias, insurgent groups, or criminal gangs in regions where legal supply is controlled or monitored. Unlike container shipping, which leaves a long paper trail, an under-the-radar delivery avoids port inspections and customs checks. The consequence is cascading. Armed groups become harder to dislodge, local violence rises, and weak states see their security institutions undermined. Weapons moving quietly by sea can prolong conflicts, empower cartels or militias, and make regional policing more dangerous and complex. Cash and financial logistics. Physical cash remains central to large-scale illicit markets. Moving bulk currency across borders is risky over land and through airports, but a submerged vessel can deliver millions in untraceable notes to pay suppliers, bribe officials, or seed money laundering operations. Narco subs can thus act as offshore vaults on the move. This practice makes financial tracing harder. When cash changes hands outside formal banking systems, it undercuts anti-money laundering efforts. Front companies and shell corporations then convert physical currency into assets, making it difficult for investigators to follow the money back to decision makers. In short, silent sea shipments of cash lubricate corruption and shield criminal leadership. Human trafficking and covert transport. While less common than drug runs, these vessels have been implicated in human smuggling schemes. The same advantages, a low-profile approach, flexible routes, and deniable landings, appeal to criminal networks moving migrants, fugitives, or high-value individuals who need covert transit. Human cargo adds moral urgency and complexity. Survivors are often in dire need of medical care and legal protection. Smuggling people in cramped, unventilated hulls is profoundly dangerous. Stories of suffocation, abandonment, and death are not rare. For destination countries, covert maritime human movement can strain asylum systems, create humanitarian crises, and complicate bilateral relations with source countries. Dual use and high-value contraband. Beyond weapons, cash, and people, narco subs can carry rare or high-value goods, precious minerals, endangered wildlife products, or high-end electronics, bypassing customs and trade controls. The portability and deniability of these vessels make them attractive for any cargo where secrecy is valuable. When regulated goods move illicitly, entire legal markets suffer. Conservation efforts lose ground when wildlife products are smuggled. Sanctions regimes weaken when restricted goods find covert routes, and legitimate businesses face unfair competition. Strategic and geopolitical risks. As the range and sophistication of narco subs grow, so do the geopolitical implications. If criminal networks can maintain reliable, covert sea lines, they gain strategic freedom to project power, fund allied groups, or influence fragile states. In worst-case scenarios, non-state actors with access to such logistics could coordinate with rogue regimes or proxy groups, complicating international responses. The deniability offered by a submarine-run delivery also creates plausible cover. Nations can deny direct links while illicit networks maintain cross-border supply chains. That ambiguity raises the stakes for diplomats and security planners. It is harder to attribute, harder to sanction, and harder to build coalitions for action. Policy and humanitarian impacts. The broadening use of narco subs demands a multifaceted response. Security-focused measures, improved maritime surveillance, interdiction, and international legal frameworks must be paired with financial controls and local development efforts that reduce the economic drivers of participation. Humanitarian responses are equally vital. Survivors of human smuggling require protection. Coastal communities need alternatives to illicit income, and judicial systems must be strengthened so prosecutions deter broader networks, not just low-level couriers. A tool of many uses. In the hands of criminals, the narco sub is more than a drug transporter. It is a modular, deniable logistics tool. Its presence multiplies threats, fueling armed groups, obscuring financial trails, endangering migrants, and undermining governance. Each new use raises the cost of inaction. The sea that once offered limitless freedom for legitimate trade now carries hidden commerce with consequences far beyond narcotics. As we watch the ghost ships evolve, we must recognize that the problem is not just one of drugs, it is a widening challenge to security, rule of law, and human dignity. Addressing it means seeing the vessel for what it has become, a dangerous, adaptable conduit for crime in many forms. The ocean has no borders, but crime thrives in the spaces where laws and jurisdictions end. One nation alone cannot guard the sea. It takes a web of satellites, ships, intelligence networks, and shared determination. In recent years, the fight against narco-subs has become a blueprint for how the world can work together against invisible threats. From the Caribbean to the Pacific, a quiet alliance now hunts the ghost ships. The birth of a global effort. For decades, smugglers exploited the gaps between nations. A vessel launched in one country might pass through international waters, enter another's exclusive economic zone, and land on a third's shore, each crossing creating delays and legal confusion. Early on, this disunity gave traffickers an advantage. That began to change as seizures mounted and evidence piled up. Realizing that no single navy or coast guard could cover the ocean alone, countries started to link radar feeds, intelligence reports, and patrol schedules. Regional agreements such as the Joint Interagency Task Force South, GRTFS, based in Key West, Florida, became models for multinational coordination. The task force brings together US, Latin American, and European partners to share intelligence in real time, blending satellite data with maritime surveillance to predict routes and intercept at sea. This fusion of technology and diplomacy marked a turning point. For the first time, nations were not reacting to narco-subs, they were anticipating them. Eyes in the sky, satellites and aerial surveillance. Modern counter-smuggling operations rely heavily on what can't be seen from the deck of a ship. Satellites orbit silently above, scanning ocean lanes for subtle clues, an irregular wake, a slow-moving heat signature, a missing vessel in shipping data. Artificial intelligence now helps filter these images, identifying patterns too complex for human eyes. In low orbit, synthetic aperture radar satellites can detect surface irregularities even through clouds or darkness. Combined with optical imaging, they can track a suspected vessel across thousands of kilometers. This technology has given agencies a powerful advantage, transforming the vastness of the ocean into a monitored grid. High-endurance drone fleets complement these orbital eyes. From the Caribbean to the Gulf of Guinea, drones patrol for hours, feeding live video to command centers. Unlike manned aircraft, drones can linger, following a target for days without fatigue. When a suspect vessel is spotted, coordinates are transmitted instantly to nearby patrols. The ocean's listeners, naval and acoustic networks. Beneath the surface, sound travels farther than light. That's why anti-narcotics units are adopting acoustic surveillance systems originally designed for military submarines. Hydrophones, underwater microphones, can detect the faint hum of engines or the rhythmic churn of propellers, even from miles away. When several hydrophones are deployed across choke points like the Panama Canal approaches or the Caribbean Sea, they create a triangulated listening field that helps locate moving subs. Naval vessels now integrate these listening systems with surface radar and infrared cameras, forming multi-sensor webs capable of tracking a vessel even when it disappears below the surface. Some nations have even installed floating sonar buoys, temporary ears, left at strategic locations to catch passing noise signatures. The US, Colombia, and Panama, for example, frequently coordinate such deployments. The data is cross-referenced with shipping manifests and satellite observations to flag anomalies. The ocean may still be vast, but with enough data, it becomes a map of probabilities rather than mystery. Intelligence sharing and cyber coordination. Technology alone doesn't win the chase, information does. The heart of modern anti-narco sub-warfare is intelligence sharing. Through networks like Interpol, Europol, and regional maritime centers, countries exchange not only tracking data but also criminal intelligence, names of shipbuilders, financiers, front companies, and bank transactions. Secure communication platforms allow analysts from different continents to coordinate in real time, often leading to simultaneous land and sea operations. Cyber forensics plays a growing role, too. By tracing encrypted communications, digital payments, and GPS devices recovered from seized vessels, analysts build behavioral profiles of smuggling networks. These insights then feed back into predictive models that help identify likely launch zones or delivery points. This feedback loop, from field to satellite to cyber intelligence, allows authorities to act faster than ever before. When it works, the results are impressive. A vessel can be spotted, tracked, and intercepted within a single day. The new tools of collaboration. The rise of cooperative technology means the fight is not just on the waves but across entire data ecosystems. Some examples of tools now standard in joint operations include Integrated Maritime Domain Awareness, MDA, systems, shared digital dashboards that fuse global shipping data, sensor feeds, and satellite imagery. Unmanned surface vehicles, USVs, small robotic boats that patrol autonomously, scanning for unusual radar reflections. Real-time data links, encrypted communication channels that let aircraft, ships, and command centers share live coordinates across nations. AI-enhanced analytics, software trained on thousands of past smuggling runs to predict future ones, turning intelligence into anticipation. Such systems have proven their worth. In 2024, for instance, a multinational task force used AI-analyzed satellite data to locate a semi-submersible in the Eastern Pacific, leading to one of the largest cocaine seizures in recent history. What once required luck now relies on coordinated precision. Challenges that remain. Yet even with all this collaboration, the ocean still holds its secrets. Budget limitations, political mistrust, and inconsistent data sharing sometimes weaken the network. Some coastal states, lacking equipment or training, struggle to maintain parity with better funded partners. And smugglers are quick to study these weaknesses, adjusting launch points and timing to exploit bureaucratic delays. Moreover, privacy and sovereignty concerns make full transparency difficult. Sharing satellite or naval data can reveal strategic capabilities, so countries must balance openness with caution. Effective cooperation, therefore, depends not just on technology but on trust, a commodity as valuable as any radar or drone. Toward a shared horizon, the fight against the ghost ships is becoming a global template for transnational cooperation. It blends technology, diplomacy, and shared purpose. Each intercepted sub represents not only a victory over smugglers but a triumph of coordination, the moment when many nations act as one oceanic guardian. In the end, this collaboration reflects a hard truth: no one can police the sea alone. The narco subs may travel in silence, but above them, across thousands of kilometers, satellites, drones, ships, and people form a chorus of watchers. And while the ocean remains vast, every day it becomes just a little less silent, a little less hidden, and a little less free for the ghost ships to roam. Studio microphone final narration. The ghosts beneath the waves. The ocean has always been a mirror of humanity, vast, mysterious, and filled with both wonder and danger. And somewhere beneath its rolling waves, far from the eyes of the world, floats the proof of our greatest paradox, that the same ingenuity capable of reaching the stars can also be used to hide in the depths. Narco submarines are more than machines. They're symbols of what people will do when desperation meets ambition, when creativity is twisted by greed. Each vessel tells a story, not of glory, but of survival, fear, and the relentless pursuit of profit. In the quiet hum of their engines, you can almost hear the echo of a question that never goes away: how far will humanity go to outsmart itself? For every new detection system, smugglers design a quieter craft. For every radar sweep, they find a new shadow to hide in. It's a perpetual race. Innovation versus enforcement, secrecy versus surveillance, where both sides learn from each other in a dark kind of progress. The people who build these ghost ships don't see themselves as villains. Many come from poverty, from places where the sea is both a provider and a graveyard. They see the subs not as symbols of crime, but as tools, crude, brilliant, and deadly, to break free from lives of limitation. Yet, in chasing fortune beneath the waves, they become part of a machine that traps them deeper. Law enforcement, too, fights its own tide, not just against traffickers, but against the sheer scale of the ocean, the politics of nations, and the limits of human endurance. Their victories are often unseen, their losses buried beneath the waves. Still, they persist, because every sub-stop means lives saved, chaos delayed, and order, however fragile, preserved for another day. But even as one ghost ship is captured, another is being built. Somewhere in a hidden jungle workshop, sparks fly from welding torches. Blueprints are drawn on the backs of cardboard. A new hull takes shape in the shadows. And once again, the cycle begins. Because at its core, this isn't just a story about submarines. It's about the human spirit, endlessly inventive, endlessly flawed. The same creativity that builds cities, satellites, and cures also builds ghost ships. So as the ocean swallows another night, and another vessel slips quietly into the dark, one can't help but wonder, will we ever reach a point where human brilliance serves only creation, and not destruction? Until then, the silent war continues, beneath the surface, beyond the radar, and deep within the human heart.